Please, can you take me to the hospital?
She was in labor, alone on a cold sidewalk, ignored by everyone who passed her by. With shaking hands and a breaking voice, she begged a stranger, "Please, can you take me to the hospital?" She didn't know that this quiet man would change her life forever. Backhand index pointing right before this story unfolds. Subscribe to our channel, because stories like this remind us that kindness still exists in a world that often looks away. The night swallowed the city in cold silence as Lena clutched her stomach and staggered along the cracked sidewalk. Her coat was thin, her shoes worn through at the soles, and her body trembled with more than just the winter air. Another contraction tore through her, sharp and unforgiving, forcing her to stop and brace herself against the streetlight. She was poor, she was alone, and tonight she was invisible. Cars rushed past her like she was nothing more than a shadow. People glanced once, then looked away. Some pretended to check their phones. Others crossed the street. A pregnant woman in pain was an inconvenience they didn't have time for. Lena whispered through clenched teeth, "Please, help me." Her voice barely survived the wind. Her husband had left months ago when he found out she was pregnant. No goodbye, no money, no phone calls, just a door that never opened again. Since then, life had become a series of closed faces and unanswered prayers. Another contraction hit, stronger this time. Her knees buckled, and she slid down to the curb, breathing hard, tears mixing with sweat. Panic set in. She knew this pain. She knew what it meant. "I need a hospital," she whispered desperately, her hands shaking. "Please, can someone take me?" A man nearby shook his head and hurried away. A woman stared, then turned her back. To them, Lena wasn't a mother about to give birth. She was a problem. Her strength was fading when footsteps slowed beside her. She looked up, expecting rejection again. Instead, she saw a man standing still in the chaos of the street. No rush, no disgust, just quiet attention. His clothes were simple, his expression calm, but his eyes held something rare. He didn't sigh. He didn't hesitate. He didn't ask what she could offer in return. He knelt beside her, meeting her gaze as another contraction passed. "Can you take me to hospital?" Lena begged, her voice breaking. He nodded gently, not out of pity, not out of obligation, but because, in a world that kept looking away, he chose to see her. The man didn't rush her. That was the first thing Lena noticed as he helped her to her feet. In a world that always seemed to move too fast for her pain, he moved slowly, carefully, like her life mattered. He wrapped his coat around her shoulders without a word, shielding her from the cold and from the eyes that had already decided she wasn't worth stopping for. "It's okay," he said softly, steady as the ground beneath her. "We'll get you there." He didn't ask where her family was. He didn't ask how she ended up alone. He didn't ask why a pregnant woman was standing on the street in the middle of the night. He just opened the car door and helped her inside. The car was warm, clean, quiet. It smelled faintly of leather and something calm, something safe. As soon as Lena sat down, another contraction hit, stealing her breath. She cried out, clutching her stomach, panic flooding her chest. I'm sorry," she gasped. "I don't know if I can." "You can," he interrupted gently, sitting beside her instead of the driver's seat. "You're doing exactly what you need to do." He held her hand, firm and grounding. His grip didn't tighten when she squeezed too hard. He didn't flinch when she cried. He didn't look away when fear spilled down her face. He breathed with her. In through the nose, he said calmly. Out through the mouth. "I've got you." No one had said those words to Lena in months. The city lights blurred past the windows as he drove, one hand on the wheel, the other never leaving hers. Every time the pain came back stronger, he stayed the same, unshaken, present, patient. When she apologized again, embarrassed by her tears, he shook his head. "You don't need to apologize for surviving," he said. Those words hit her harder than the contractions. Between waves of pain, Lena noticed small things about him. His voice never rose. His eyes stayed focused but gentle. When she trembled, he adjusted the heater. When she whimpered, he spoke her through it like he had done this 1,000 times before. "What's your name?" she finally whispered. "Daniel," he replied after a pause. And yours. Lena. Lena, he repeated, as if memorizing it. She didn't know why, but hearing her name spoken like that, without judgment, without irritation, made her chest ache. She realized then how long it had been since anyone had treated her like a person instead of a burden. Another contraction surged, sharper than the last. Lena screamed, fear flooding her eyes. Something's wrong, she cried. I can't do this alone. You're not alone, Daniel said instantly, tightening his grip just enough for her to feel his strength. I'm right here. Look at me. She did. And somehow, the panic eased. For the first time that day, maybe for the first time in a long time, Lena felt safe. Not because the pain had stopped, not because her life had suddenly become easier, but because someone had stayed. She didn't know that his name carried power in boardrooms and headlines. She didn't know that his decisions moved markets and built empires. All she knew was this. In the middle of the worst night of her life, his presence carried peace. The hospital lights were blinding after the darkness of the street. As the car came to a stop at the emergency entrance, Daniel was already out, opening her door before Lena could even reach for the handle. Nurses rushed toward them with a wheelchair, their voices urgent, efficient. She's in active labor, Daniel said calmly, answering their questions before Lena could form the words herself. As they wheeled her inside, Lena reached for his hand instinctively, afraid that once she let go, everything would fall apart again. He walked beside her, steady and silent, his presence still anchoring her through the chaos of white walls and rushing feet. Then, suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the noise. Lena. She turned her head and saw him, her boyfriend, standing near the entrance, breathless and pale. He must have finally answered her calls. For a brief moment, relief and confusion tangled in her chest. Daniel stopped walking. He didn't step forward. He didn't explain who he was. He didn't remind anyone that without him, she might not even be here. He simply stepped back. Lena noticed it through the haze of pain, the way he gave her space, the way he faded into the background as if he'd always intended to. Her boyfriend rushed to her side, taking her hand, speaking words that felt rushed and unfamiliar. Nurses shifted their attention. The moment changed. Daniel nodded once, politely, to no one in particular. Lena tried to speak. Wait, she whispered, but another contraction ripped through her, stealing her voice. By the time she could look again, he was already walking away. No name spoken aloud. No thank you received. No explanation offered. He didn't wait for praise. He didn't linger for gratitude. He didn't even say goodbye. The sliding doors closed behind him with a soft hiss. And just like that, he was gone. Hours later, after the pain and the pushing and the exhaustion blurred together, Lena lay in a hospital bed, her newborn resting against her chest. The room was quiet now, filled only with the gentle rhythm of her baby's breathing. Everyone spoke about how lucky she was, how things worked out, how help arrived just in time. But Lena couldn't stop thinking about the man who had left before she could say thank you. There was a strange emptiness in her chest, an ache that had nothing to do with labor. It felt like someone important had passed through her life for a reason she didn't yet understand and vanished without leaving a trace. All she had left was his first name, and the feeling that fate had brushed past her, softly, silently, and moved on. The hospital room was finally quiet. Lena lay propped against white pillows, her body aching but her heart full as her newborn slept against her chest. The baby's tiny fingers curled instinctively into her gown, as if afraid the world might take her away too. Lena kissed her forehead, tears slipping down her cheeks, tears of relief, exhaustion, and disbelief that they had made it through the night. A small television murmured in the corner of the room, left on only to break the silence. Lena wasn't really watching. Her whole world was breathing softly in her arms. Then the tone of the broadcast changed. Breaking news tonight. The anchor's voice sharpened. The screen filled with urgent red banners and fast-moving text. Lena glanced up absently until the image froze her breath. The man's face appeared on the screen. Clear, centered, impossible to mistake. Her heart stopped. It was him, The same calm eyes. The same quiet presence. The man who had held her hand while she screamed in pain. The man who had wrapped his coat around her shoulders. The man who had walked away without saying goodbye. The caption beneath his face read, Ethan Hale, billionaire, CEO, missing amid corporate crisis. Lena's fingers tightened around the blanket. The reporter continued, voice urgent. Ethan Hale, the reclusive billionaire and CEO of Hale Industries, has been unaccounted for since earlier today. Sources confirm he vanished just hours before a critical board takeover meeting that could shift billions in assets. Images flashed, private jets, glass towers, flashing cameras, stock numbers climbing and crashing. This wasn't just a good man. This was power. This was influence. This was a man the world was desperately searching for. Lena felt cold spread through her chest. That's not possible, she whispered, her voice shaking. She stared at the screen, replaying every moment in her mind. His calm, his patience, the way he never checked his phone, the way he never once mentioned who he was, or what he owned, or what waited for him elsewhere. While the world panicked over lost billions, he had been kneeling on a sidewalk with her. Her baby stirred, letting out a soft sound, grounding her back into the moment. Lena looked down at the tiny face, then back at the screen, her thoughts spiraling. Why would someone like him stop for someone like her? She was poor, abandoned, invisible to almost everyone. He had nothing to gain, no audience, no reward. He hadn't even stayed for thanks. The news anchor kept talking about markets, investors, and urgency, but Lena barely heard it. One question echoed louder than all the headlines combined. Why'd he choose me? Her chest tightened as understanding slowly formed. Maybe the answer wasn't who he was. Maybe it was who he chose to be, when no one was watching. The days after the birth were not gentle. Reality didn't soften just because Lena had survived the night. Instead, it came crashing down harder than ever. Her boyfriend, the same man who had arrived late and breathless, didn't stay long. Arguments replaced apologies. Accusations followed gratitude. He questioned the baby, questioned her choices, questioned her worth. Then he left again, this time louder. Word spread fast in places like hers. A poor woman, an abandoned labor story whispered with cruel curiosity. Hospital bills piled up. Social workers asked questions that felt more like judgments. Online comments, shared without her consent, painted her as irresponsible, desperate, lucky to be alive but undeserving of sympathy. The system didn't see a survivor. It saw a problem. Lena sat alone in a small room, rocking her baby through the nights, replaying everything in her mind. The cold sidewalk, the pain, the stranger's steady voice. You're not alone. But now she was, or so she thought. One afternoon, as rain streaked down the window and the baby finally slept, a knock came at the door. Lena froze. No one ever came unless they wanted something, money, answers, explanation she was too tired to give. She opened the door slowly. He stood there, not in a suit, not surrounded by cameras, not announced by headlines. Just a man, quiet, familiar, real. For a second, Lena couldn't breathe. You, she whispered. He smiled gently. Hi, Lena. Her knees nearly gave out. Ethan Hale, the billionaire the world chased, stood in her doorway as if he had never left that night. As if he belonged there. As if power meant nothing in this moment. I heard what happened, he said softly. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. Tears spilled before she could stop them. Why are you here? She asked, voice breaking. After everything, after who you are. He shook his head. I'm here because of who you are. He stepped inside, lowering his voice instinctively so he wouldn't wake the baby. When Lena told him everything, the betrayal, the shaming, the fear of losing her child, he didn't interrupt. He didn't offer empty comfort. He listened, just like before. I didn't stop that night as a CEO, he said finally. I stopped as a man who saw someone in pain. She looked at him, searching his face. And now, he said gently, I'm not walking away. For the first time since the world had turned against her, Lena felt something shift. Not rescue, not charity, hope. Ethan didn't fix everything overnight. He didn't erase her struggles with money or pain or a single signature. What he gave her was steadier, and rarer. Support without conditions. Strength without ownership. Presence without abandonment. Two worlds collided that day, the one that had crushed her and the one that had once stopped for her on a dark street. And this time, when hope knocked on her door, it stayed. Sometimes, destiny doesn't arrive with noise or power. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in plain clothes, and changes everything. Lena thought she was invisible, but one moment of kindness proved she mattered. If this story touched your heart, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs hope today. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Because stories don't just entertain us. They remind us who we are.